This is GenesisArms. We're going to be covering 0 considerations with your Gen-12. We're going to be utilizing 2 targets. We got Shooting Target USA D-zone steels, because we're going to be pushing this out to the outer limits of 100 yards with our 5-inch barrel, and we'll be comparing that with our 10-inch barrel. For the 0, we're going to be using the new Veritech firearms training silhouettes. So we'll get a good 0 at 15 and 50 yards. Then we'll walk up to the 5-yard line and we're going to do a bore offset and do a comparison to see if there's anything different between a 15 and a 50-yard 0. So let's get to it. Eyes and ears, the Veritech silhouette target. For your reference, the red dot in the middle is going to be a 1-inch circle. That's going to move out to a 6-inch, 8-inch, and a 12-inch ring on the outer ring here. It's going to make it easy for us to do a rapid assessment of our patterning once we get to that portion of it. Plus, this gives us an easy visible for the red dot to be held, and then we'll be able to make those adjustments for point of aim to point of impact. Additionally, on the cranial vault, we have a red dot bore oversight. So if we hold the dot here, we should be getting impacts into the ocular cavity. So we'll put that to the test. We're going to be doing a 15-yard 0 to start with. We're going to be doing this with 2 firearms. The first one is going to be our 5-inch with the HuxWorks Ventum 12 suppressor. We're going to be utilizing EXPS 3-1s as the holographic weapon sight. That gives us a nice clean 1 MOA dot, so when we push this thing back to 100 yards, we'll be able to hold a nice point of reference. We're going to be shooting Federal 1,300 feet per second low recoil slugs, and they are the law enforcement rifled slug. We're also going to be shooting the 10.5. The 10.5 we find is pretty comparable to our 5-inch with the suppressor, even though the 5-inch with the suppressor is about an inch to 1.5 inches shorter in overall length when compared to a 10.5-inch barrel Gen-12. The performance-wise, they're pretty consistent, both in accuracy at distance and patterning, which we will do here shortly. Okay, once you fired your first volley, you're going to want to make your adjustments based on what your impacts are. Make a note that even though you're shooting slugs, sometimes the back of that will have a wad and it will come off, and so you'll end up with double impacts. Even though we shot 3 rounds, we have 6 impacts. So look for the clean cut and the lead mark, and that's how you're going to know it's a slug rather than the wad. So make those adjustments. Looks like we just need to bring things up a little bit, a little flyer here, a little fast on the trigger, but we'll tidy this up and we'll redo it. Once you've done your 0 and you feel good about it, we're going to just do a final confirmation before we go ahead and move up and do the bore offset. Once you've got those 2, we're going to move up to the 5-yard line. At the 5-yard line, we're going to be doing a bore offset. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a minute, aim high on the cranial vault, so there's that red mark on this target, and you're going to fire 1 round trying to get in the ocular cavity. So we got the 10.5-inch with the bore offset at a 15-yard. You can see on the target, it's directly just at the lower 1/3 of that 2-inch circle. With the 5-inch, we're going to be at the top of that circle. Now these are lower 1/3 height optics, so that may change if you go to a co-witness or you go to a taller mount as well, but that's already pretty good to start with. It's going to get you 15 yards, is still going to get you into that ocular cavity. It'll be interesting to see what that looks like for a bullet drop at 100 yards. So let's check that out. All right, so what we have is a point of impact based on the 100-yard 0. Our point of aim is going to be the green dot in the center. Now, mind you, this was shot off of the mag well, in the prone position. So obviously using either a bipod or a tripod or even a bag support, you could probably tighten this up a little bit. But here we have roughly 11 and a 10-inch spread here, but it is pretty centered on the target as well. So 5-inch gun at 100 yards, completely doable. And then on the 10-inch, some good center impacts here, one off to the left, but again, point of aim is here. We do see maybe a little bit closer to center with less drop with the 10.5 specifically. And we'll have to put that in the chrono and see where the difference might be there. As promised, we completed the 15-yard zero. Now we're moving into the 50-yard. All right, so these are the first impacts we have at the 50-yard line. Now, we didn't change our 15-yard zero. We just laid down at the 50-yard and went right to the 50-yard. And so what we have is a string of shots that are high of center. So we want to find the center point, make our adjustment down. We find that both on the 5-inch barrel with the suppressed, and the same result pretty much occurred here as well. We do have this impact over here, but the two here are high over center, so we're going to want to probably adjust this down just a little bit, and we're going to do a reconfirmation at the 50-yard, see where these impacts land. All right, coming back from the 50-yard line, you can see that we tightened up the group. This is with the 5-inch suppressed. We're inside the 6-inch ring at the 50-yard, and we even got an impact on the 1-inch circle. So we can refine that a little bit more, but for time's sake, we're just gonna roll into the bore offset. The 10.5, we also got tighter groups as well. You can see this here. We got an impact here, plus we got a couple here on the 8-inch circle there. So it's good enough for the bore offset. We have a good zero. We might take a little bit of time here off camera just to refine it. All right, 50-yard zero. We're at the 5-yard line. We're gonna do a bore offset. We're gonna figure out where this impact is, holding high to get that ocular cavity block. All right, line is ready. On the command of up, stand by. Up. Go ahead and clear the weapons. And what we see instantly is a near identical impact zone for both guns. The results are in. At the 5-yard line with the 50-yard zero, the 10.5-inch, you can see the hold point here. We're right in between the two eyes. Same thing over here with the 5-inch and the Ventum 12K Hux suppressor. It's near identical performance with the 50-yard zero. All right, we're 50-yard zero, and now we're gonna confirm out at 100 yards. We have finished the 15-yard zero and a 50-yard zero, and we're gonna go over a couple considerations. What is important to note is that with a 50-yard zero, you have some windage considerations because you're further from the target. At 15 yards, you may not see a left or right deviation as clearly or easily, so 50-yard might give you that offset. And then with the final thing that we did is the bore offset, and they were near identical in a 15-yard zero, and you do get a good cranial vault impact, but with the 50-yard zero, we had an identical impact. Now, mind you, you'll also notice that the grouping sizes. You'll notice that on this one here, we have a tighter impact of the 3 rounds versus when we did it previously with the 15-yard. It's important to always repeat your data. Do it consistently over time. That way you can have a larger data base so you can more clearly articulate what your zero is doing and how that group is actually performing over the long haul. Mind you, ammo considerations, so lot and projectile deformations. Even within the slugs, we notice that they have different diameters, even within the same lot. So there's inconsistency with the ammo. That's gonna be printed on the targets for you to be able to articulate how your gun is gonna be able to shoot at these distances. One of my favorite things about the bore over height impacts is that with a 50-yard zero, as we saw, we had near identical impacts on both of the platforms of the Gen-12. However, it's the exact same sight picture you're gonna get from a carbine. So if you're using an AR platform, the Gen-12 has the exact same manual of arms, and it's gonna have a near identical point of impact with the same sight picture at those close distances. And as we push that back with slugs, you find that your bore over height impacts are pretty consistent with what you would find with a carbine zeroed similarly. So one platform or two platforms and one sight picture reduces that training curve immensely. So go prove it yourself, get after it. All right, now we're gonna move into patterning with the Gen-12. We have two models, the 5-inch suppressed with the Huxworks Venom 12K and the 10.5-inch barreled Gen-12. We're gonna do two different ammunitions. We're gonna first start with it's the green Winchester double-aught buck. It's non-flight control, and then we're gonna move into the Federal 9-pellet flight control wad to give you a comparison of what it's like to shoot buck not flight controlled and flight controlled, and see if we have a noticeable difference both in the performance between a 10.5 and the 5-inch barrel or the ammo itself. Let's get after it. All right, so let's look at the impact zones. So we're at the 5-yard line with the 5-inch suppressed. We have all of the impacts within the 6-inch circle. On average with the green hold, Winchester ammo, non-flight control, 9-pellet, I'm seeing a pretty consistent 5-inch group out of the 5-inch gun. We move to the 10-yard here. This ends up being about 11 or so inches. I'd have to do an exact measurement, but 10 yards, you're gonna be almost a 10-inch spread. Go to the 15. Now we have all 9 pellets on the target. We don't have anything in the white, but we do have some impacts reaching into the arms on both sides and then into the lower abdomen where the other impacts are gonna be here. This is gonna be it's gonna be, again, probably a 15, 17-inch group. And then on the 25, this is where you start to see where you're gonna start missing pellets with the 5-inch. We're gonna have a total accountability of -2, but we have one up in the snow, one over here in a piercing in the arm, and then low abdomen, also one in the white and one over here in the shoulder. So we can see that the spread is getting pretty great at the 25-yard. With the 5-inch, you might want to move to a slug or maybe a flight control, as we'll see here in a minute. All right, pattern testing. Winchester, green hole, non-flight control, 5, 10, 15, and 25. Okay, that concludes the 10.5-inch with the Winchester green hold, non-flight control 9-pellet buckshot. The patterns, honestly, they're pretty consistent right across the board between all the yard lines. At the 5-yard line, we have a 5-inch group. You can see all 9 pellets nicely here. If I put that, it's gonna be right inside that white spot again. We move down to the 10-yard line. We're gonna see this is gonna be right around a 10-inch group. You see that all right in here. This is the 12-inch circle. 15-yard line. Let's see, do I have all 9 pellets? I have all 9 pellets. Got the wad impact down here. We got 1 in the arm, but the remainder of those 8 pellets are gonna be inside the C-zone steel. And then we have the 25. 25 is interesting, all right? So we have 7 accounted for, but we have 1 way down here on the edge of the paper. So that's 1 on the white here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have, let's just call it 5 good within the black zone. So the 5-inch suppressed and the 10.5 both had 7 within the target spread. However, this one has 5 in the impact here. So use that data point as we can. We're gonna jump right into the flight control ammo and see what we get for improved or depreciated performance. All right, doing the 5, 10, 15, and 25. 9-pellet flight control from Federal. It's gonna be good. As you probably already knew, flight control is impressive at patterning extremely tight. And out of the 5-inch barrel, it is no different. What we see here is it's basically a slug impact at 5 yards. Over here at the 10, we're gonna have 8 inside the 6-inch circle with 1 outside. This here, all 9 kind of strung a little bit lateral. You can see this here with 1 in the shoulder. That's 8 inside of the 12. That's a 9-inch group overall. And then here we have the 25-yard line. We have 100% accountability of all 9 rounds on the entire target. So we have 1 here, here, and 1 down in the arm. And then we have these main impacts here within the target itself. So 17.5 or maybe 18 inches from there to there. But having all 9 pellets at 25 yards with the 5-inch barrel with a rough idea of that those impacts are going to come here and they're not flying off unaccounted for is really impressive and something to keep note of. All right, let's put it right next to the 10.5-inch barrel. "10-inch barrel, pattern testing, flight control, 9 pellet from Federal, 5, 10, 15, and 25. That concludes the Gen-12 with the 10.5-inch barrel. Sometimes I'll call it out as just a 10-inch barrel. Just understand it is the 10.5. So at 5-yard line with the flight control, we got a single hole, just like we did with the 5-inch and the flight control. At 10 yards, nice, tight, compact, 9 pellet group here. It's only a couple inches, 3 inches or so. 15 yard, it does open up, but we're all within the C-zone steel. So down here in the abdomen, right in this area, that easily fits inside the 12-inch circle. All right, and then the last one here is the 25-yard line. Again, the maximum spread on this is gonna be from here to here, and that measured roughly 16, 17 inches. So we're within an inch or so of the 5-inch barrel, and the 10-inch barrel are pretty much on par with each other in performance. And we have accountability of all 9 within the black, 2 out here in the arm, the rest in the torso here. So flight control, definitely an advantage. Even out of the shorter barrels, it still performs in line with what you might expect out of an 18-inch gun. All right, let's do a conclusion after this. We got the results for our 0 considerations. We did a 15-yard 0 and a 50-yard 0. Those were selected because of the most common shotgun 0 distances. Wanted to see if there was anything different between legacy shotguns and the Gen-12 in doing a comparison there. We got to go out to 100 yards and see the impacts and do a direct comparison between a 10.5-inch barrel and a 5-inch barrel. And then we also did pattern testing. So we got up to the 5-yard all the way back to the 25-yard, and we got to shoot 2 different patterns from double-aught buck in non-flight control, which was a Winchester 9 pellet, and then we had a Federal flight control 9 pellet as well. And the results were awesome. I mean, obviously, if it's home defense or even if you want to get out to the range and have tighter patterns, those consistent with like a choked gun, even though you're using a shorter, smooth bore, cylinder bore, the Gen-12 is going to give you the results you need with accountability, especially when you're comparing that with the flight control wad. One of the other things that we like to think about is just overall training in general. So how you train, most people are going to be out, if you're picking up a Gen-12, you're going to have the AR manual of arms. You're going to be familiar with an AR. Your sight picture will be similar as well because you're going to be using some type of red dot or even AR iron sights if you went that route. So your height over bore is going to be consistent. So we gave you a snapshot of some of the testing that we do. We do this regularly. We get different results based on the ammunition that we use. And there's a million varieties of ammunition out there in the market. You got to find the ammo that works best for you and your purpose. That's the versatility of a shotgun. So whether it's double-aught buck, bird shot, or slugs, you have a wide range of options and performance that you're going to have to get out on the range or at your indoor range and figure out how your weapon system is doing the pattern. So get out there, get the training, get the data, become an asset. Until next time, check us out, genesisarms.com. Hey, rather than me telling you to like, subscribe, and comment, watch this full auto video and still do those things.